You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun show. Now in our 12th year, you're making a difference here, especially to me. This week, a lot of M's. We're talking about Maryland, about medical marijuana and guns.
blackmanwithagun.com. Ken Blanchard's Pro-Gun Podcast.
And before we get started, I want to offer you an autographed copy of my autobiographical book, Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. For $20, it'll be sent directly to you. The book is a conversation starter. It's a book about a former Marine that became a CIA firearms instructor who later became a gun rights activist since 1991. It belongs on every gun owner's bookshelf. Yes, you can get it on Amazon, but it won't be personally from me. Hit me up at blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. And let's make it happen today. And a quick shout out to all my YouTube listeners. Thank you so much for being here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Being an armed citizen means having a gun with you all the time. Carrying a firearm every day requires a holster that is both concealable and comfortable. Whether you choose our Super Tuck Deluxe or Mini Tuck, you'll have the confidence that comes from being discreetly and comfortably armed, prepared to face unforeseen dangers. Crossbreed holsters are handmade in the USA, come with a lifetime warranty, and a 2-week try-it-free guarantee. Order your holster today at crossbreedholsters.com.
And now, as Monty Python used to say, and now for something completely different. I'm going to talk about dope, marijuana, weed, grass, reefer. I've never talked about it ever on this show. But as it relates to guns, I want to give you some definitions, just in case you're not one of those kind that know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the plant that is a mix of dried, shredded leaves and flowers, and it's often green, brown, or gray, that people roll up and smoke like a cigarette, called a joint, or a cigar, called a blunt. It's smoked in a pipe, it's mixed in food, it's eaten, it's brewed as a tea, it's smoked. They smoke the oils from it. They use it in vaping, and they use it for medicinal purposes for the oil. Marijuana can make you feel silly, relaxed, sleepy, happy, nervous, or scared. It can change your senses of sight, hearing, and touch. Marijuana can make it hard to think clearly. In some cases, people start actually having hallucinations. It's been around a really, really long time. It has chemicals that can actually help with some health problems. Some states are making it legal to use the plant as a medicine for certain illnesses, but there isn't enough research to change the federal government because they don't classify it as medicinal. I'm going to get into that in detail. A few medicines have been made as pills or oils. These medicines have chemicals that are like the ones in the marijuana plant, but are not the same type that people usually smoke. And they can treat nausea if you have cancer. And they can give you an appetite if you've lost yours due to an illness. I've even heard that some of the cures, like chemotherapy and radiation, can actually make you lose your appetite. But like everything that you smoke, it can harm your lungs, and it can also have effects on your brain and your body. I've also heard that another problem with marijuana as a medicine is that the ingredients aren't exactly the same from plant to plant, and there's no way to know what you're getting. But when talking about guns and drugs, they're two of the most controversial topics in America today. Am I right? You know, advocates for and against the legalization of marijuana for recreational use have been sparring for decades, in part at least because there are merits on both sides of the argument, but the same cannot be said for whether doctors should be free to prescribe marijuana for medical purposes. What in the world does this have to do with the Black Man with a Gun show and gun advocacy? Well, between 1998 and 2014, nearly 100,000 prospective gun purchasers went home empty because they were flagged as using illegal drugs, according to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. But the agency could not say how many of those used medical or recreational marijuana. You know, that federal background check form for gun purchases requires applicants to state whether they unlawfully use marijuana. You know, the 4473, it's on there. It also warns them that marijuana use remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized by a state. And that's how come I never got into it, because I've been carrying a firearm since, 1982. Yeah. I'm getting old, doggone it. But on a side note, I'm enjoying my middle-agedness. It's easier to go with the flow. You know, my priorities are straight right now. I got clearer skin, a better beard than I ever had in my life. Seeing my kids grown and seeing how good a parent I was is kind of cool. I'm too old to be ignored. That's another good thing. But let me get back to this drug thing, because y'all don't hear me. Back to the form, right? As a result, a person who does not disclose on that background check form that they've used marijuana could be charged with a felony. On the other hand, an affirmative answer regarding marijuana use or showing a gun clerk a driver's license identifying a person as a marijuana user for medical purposes would likely result in a person failing the background check on the spot. You see, the federal government classified marijuana as a Schedule I drug nearly 50 years ago, classifying it as a more dangerous than other controlled substances like morphine, Oxycontin, and Vicodin, believe it or not. And these are Schedule II drugs and can be legally prescribed by a physician. The DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, has the authority to reclassify marijuana by regulation, but hasn't done it yet. And it prompts some in Congress to support legislation that will reclassify it so it too can be prescribed. Now, if you have medical marijuana prescribed to you, that might be an old research piece that I found here. But that Schedule I classification has caused real problems for us gun owners and states that have legalized its use for medical purposes because of the BATFE defines anyone with a medical marijuana prescription as an admitted drug user, prohibited by definition from owning, possessing, or using a firearm. And that's why I was on this show. That's why I'm letting you know that if you tout your affinity to weed, to pot, to grass, to herb, to marijuana. In some states, federal law enforcement officers have threatened to go after either gun owners with a prescription or firearms dealers or private sellers who dare to sell them guns. Back in the day, President Ronald Reagan's closest aides, a guy by the name of Lynn Noffinger, who's no longer with us, argued for the legalization of medical marijuana when he and his family discovered that it was the only thing that seemed to stop the suffering or ease the suffering of his cancer-stricken daughter back then. Now, this was right in the height of the war on drugs thing from Nancy Reagan. And he joined others on the right and left, as well as medical experts, urging the states and the federal government to allow physicians to prescribe marijuana for patients who could benefit from its use, believing that, like morphine and other controlled substances, marijuana should be available by prescription to those who might benefit from its use. Makes sense, right? But the refusal of the federal government to accede to the judgment of the states on the issue has created problems for tens or even hundreds of thousands of gun owners who are being forced to either trade their Second Amendment rights for the chance to live pain-free or risk prosecution and imprisonment. This has been an ongoing thing since the 80s. And the appeals court ruled that a federal law prohibiting medical marijuana card holders from purchasing guns does not violate their Second Amendment rights because marijuana has been linked to, quote, irrational or unpredictable behavior, end quote. The ruling came in the case of a Nevada woman who attempted to purchase a handgun in 2011, but was denied when the gun store owner recognized her as a medical marijuana card holder, according to court documents. Her name was S. Rowan Wilson, and she said that she didn't really actually use marijuana, and she didn't inhale. But she obtained a card just to make a political statement in support of the liberalization of marijuana. Federal law prohibits gun purchases by an unlawful user and or an addict of any controlled substance. That's what it says in the book. In 2011, the BATFE clarified in a letter that the law applies to marijuana users, quote, regardless of whether, inside quote, their state has passed legislation authorizing marijuana use for medicinal purposes, quote, end. Though a growing number of states are legalizing it for medical or recreational use, marijuana remains illegal for any purpose under federal law, which considers the drug to have a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use. And that kind of goes for all government purposes, all government employees. And that's why you can't have a good government job and smoke weed. And you didn't know that, did you? And they do drug tests too. They just haven't prosecuted it really hard. But if they wanted to, they could do it. All they have to do, a supervisor has to do, is suspect it and report it, and then poof. Then your urine is required in the cup. Just like that. Now, this whole podcast is for information purposes only, but the effects of smoking marijuana fade quickly, but the drug can be detected in the body for weeks and sometimes longer. The amount of time that active ingredients and breakdown products of weed remain in the system depend on how often and how much marijuana the user has been smoking or ingesting. In your blood and in your saliva, only a few hours. In your urine, one-time use, up to 13 days. Regular use, up to 45 days. Heavy use, up to 90 days. And if it's in your hair, or they take your hair as a sample, up to 90 days, it can be traced. Just FYI. I think that's one of my employees just going out the door. Anyway, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that the federal law passes muster with the Constitution as it, quote, is beyond dispute that illegal drug users, including marijuana users, are likely, as a consequence of that use, to experience altered or impaired mental states that affect their judgment and that can lead to irrational or unpredictable behavior, end quote. The court then concluded that it is reasonable to assume, get that statement right there, it is reasonable to assume. That's what it gets you in self-defense too. You have to make sure that whatever you do legally is reasonable to assume that a medical marijuana card holder is a marijuana user, and hence reasonable to deny their gun purchase on those grounds. Now, from a legal standpoint, the nexus between marijuana use and violence was established by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit Court in Virginia in the 2014 case of United States versus Carter. And that case cited a number of studies suggesting, quote, a significant link between drug use, including marijuana use, and violence, according to the Ninth Circuit's summary. So, in the words of the Fourth Circuit Court, those studies found that probationers who had perpetrated violence in the past were significantly more likely to have used a host of drugs, marijuana, hallucinogens, sedatives, and heroin, than do probationers who had never been involved in a violent episode. Probationers. Who talks like that? Lawyers. Almost 50% of all state and federal prisoners who have committed violent felonies were drug abusers or addicts in the year before their arrest, as compared to only 2% of the general population. Individuals who used marijuana and cocaine, in addition to alcohol, were significantly more likely to engage in violent crime than individuals who only used alcohol. Among adolescent males, marijuana use in 1 year frequently predicted violence in the subsequent year. And all this came from that Fourth Circuit Court. The Fourth Circuit argued also that on the link between drug use and violence, the question of correlation versus causation doesn't matter. The government need not prove a causal link between drug use and violence to block firearms purchases for drug users. A simple link between drug use and violence, regardless of which way the causality runs, is grounds enough. Causality and correlation. Wow. Causality is the principle that everything has a cause. And correlation is a big word for the process of establishing a relationship or connection between two or more measures. Just wanted to throw that in there just in case you didn't know how I was using it in a sentence. I know you know these words, it's no big deal. But still, the Ninth Circuit did suggest causation was part of its decision, saying that irrational behavior can be a consequence of marijuana use. This argument that substance use increases risky behavior applies to plenty of other drugs too, and not just illegal ones. For example, drug policy researchers by the name of Mark Kleiman and Jonathan Calkins and Angela Hawken have pointed out that tobacco users are also more likely to engage in crime relative to the general population. So compared with non-smokers, cigarette smokers have a higher rate of criminality. They wrote in their 2011 book, Drugs and Drug Policy, what everybody needs to know. Smoking in and itself does not lead to crime, of course, but within the population of smokers, we are more likely to find individuals engaged in illicit behavior, they said. The authors also point out that there's also a much stronger link between violent behavior and alcohol than there is for many illegal drugs. there's a good deal of evidence showing an association between alcohol intoxication and pharmacological induced violent crime, they write. They also added that there is a little direct association between marijuana use or opiate use and violent crime. It is also possible that for some would-be offenders, the pharmacological effect of certain drugs, marijuana and heroin, are often given as examples, may actually reduce violent tendencies. We're talking about guns and dope, y'all. And some states like California and Colorado have legalized the use of drugs for recreational as well as medicinal, but 30 other states have legalized it for medical use only. And the DEA thus far refused to delist marijuana as a Schedule I drug, as I said before, which means people who live in states where it's legal to get a prescription to use it as a painkiller are criminals in the eyes of the feds, just so you know it. In Hawaii, the Honolulu police sent every registered gun owner in the city who had been given a marijuana prescription notice that they would have to surrender their guns and ammunition to the police within 30 days. And the notice was later rescinded, but it was a stark reminder that gun owners with a marijuana prescription are truly at risk. But you can't blame the cops because they're in a quandary as to which laws to enforce, and as a result, no one knows what to expect. In Oregon, for example, a sheriff denied several concealed carry applications because he believed possession of a medical marijuana card was an admission of illegal drug use, while an Arizona gun owner who asked the Phoenix police if she had a problem because she has a medical marijuana prescription was told she was fine as long as she didn't run into, quote, federal officer or get caught on federal land with both a gun and a prescription card. So since gun purchasers must sign a form swearing they are not habitual drug users, a holder of a marijuana prescription cannot both answer the question honestly and buy a firearm today from a gun dealer anywhere in the country. Trading a constitutional right for pain relief is a choice no one should have to make. Now, when I was doing the research for all this stuff, I thought, you know what? What's the NRA say on it? You know, that made me kind of go, And then I thought, what if I started a whole nother group? And we were like, pro-weed, pro-guns. Or maybe not. If you are a marijuana smoker, let me know what you think. I would love to hear your opinion. You can comment on the YouTube channel or hit me back on our Facebook page at blackmanwithagun 1 on Facebook group.
Who is it?
It's me, Dave. Open up, man. I got the stuff.
Who is it?
It's me, Dave, man. Open up. I got the stuff.
Who?
It's Dave, man. Open up. I think the cops saw me come in here.
Who is it?
It's Dave, man. Will you open up? I got the stuff with me.
Who?
Dave, man. Open up.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave. Come on, man. Open up. I think the cops saw me.
Dave's not here.
No, man. I'm Dave, man. Hey, come on, man.
Who is it?
It's Dave, man. Will you open up? I got the stuff with
Who?
me. Dave, man. Open up.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
Dave's not here.
No, man. I am Dave, man. Will you? Come on. Open up the door, will you? I got the stuff with me. I think the cops saw me.
Who is it?
Oh, what the hell is it? Go, man. Open up the door. It's Dave.
Who?
Dave. D-A-V-E. Will you open up the damn door? Yeah, Dave.
Dave?
Right, man. Dave. Now, will you open up the door?
Dave's not here.
Oh.
This next portion of the show is brought to you by Maryland Shall Issue. Maryland Shall Issue is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the preservation and advancement of gun owners' rights in Maryland. It seeks to educate the community about the right of self-protection, the safe handling of firearms, and the responsibility that goes with carrying a firearm in public. Join us today at marylandshallissue.org. All right, and this is hot off the press from Maryland Shall Issue post-legislative session update. What passed and what didn't. And it says, what a session. We saw the most anti-gun bills introduced since 2013. But as a community, we stood tall and defeated almost every single anti-gun measure. Maryland Shall Issue thanks each and every one of you who took time from your days, evenings, and endured sleepless nights to contribute to the defense and advancement of your fellow Marylanders' rights. Despite this particularly hostile legislative session, you didn't tire or throw in the towel. Without your phone calls, meetings, letters, and testimony, who knows the damages and criminal penalties Marylanders will be facing this year. We know we can count on you when the next time comes, and we are called and all honored to have your support. Again, thank you. And here are the bills that passed and awaiting action from Governor Hogan. SB 346, Public Safety, Regulated Firearms, Prohibition of Loans. This one criminalizes knowingly loaning, and it's in quotes, a regulated firearm to prohibit people or those you know will commit a crime or do harm, a vast improvement over what was originally introduced. The original bills would have amended Section 5-124 of the public article to criminal any such loan or gift of a regulated firearm without going through the 77R transfer process. Instead, the bill amends a different provision, Section 5-134, simply to ban, quote, loans to prohibited persons. That section already banned transfers to such persons. The original bills would have criminalized vast amounts of innocent conduct, but as enacted, the legislation is a win for common sense in the true meaning of the phrase. We count the enacted version as a big win. The next one is SB 1000, HB 1343, Public Safety, Handgun Permit Review Board repeal. It abolishes the Handgun Permit Review Board as of the date of enactment, thus ending civilian oversight of the Maryland State Police for decisions made on wear and carry permit denials and permit modifications. If denial by the MSP, an applicant or permit holder must appeal to the Office of Administrative Hearings at considerable cost. Maybe the governor will veto. We hear he might. We hope so. Let him know what you think, and you can hit the links. I will add a text to this at the end of the show so that you can find out all the stuff that I'm talking about and maybe have stumbled or stuttered over a word. HB 92 and SB 113, Public Safety, Handgun Permits and Payment of Fees. The Maryland State Police are moving to an entirely online method of applying for wear and carry permits, and this bill provides options for payment. As passed, applicants may pay via an electronic check, a credit card, or a method of online payment approved by the Secretary of the State of Police. We argued for and would have preferred more forms of payment. We see the bill as MSP housekeeping. Here are a few bills that didn't pass. How about that Colt AR-15 Sporter HBAR rifle? Would have banned possession of a H-bar rifle purchased after 10/1/2013. Nearly 6 years' worth of lawfully possessed rifles would need to be discarded by their owners without compensation, and this bill never made it out of the House Judiciary Committee. A big win. HB 468, SB 441, Public Safety, Access to Firearms, Storage Requirements, would have brought on criminal penalties for those who didn't secure firearms from children, redefined as anyone under 18 who could gain access. It never left committee in either chamber. A big win. HB 740 and SB 882, Criminal Law, Firearms, Computer-Aided Fabrication and Serial Number, otherwise known as 3D printing, would have imposed criminal penalties for manufacture and mere possession of homemade firearms. HB 740 passed the House with amendments that tried to narrow what guns were affected, those 3D printed or finished on a CNC mill, for example, and also added a requirement for the state police to report how much it would cost to register every unserialized firearm in the state. The Senate counterpart never saw a vote in the Judicial Proceeding Committee. HB 740, as passed by the House, never made it out of Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee. Another bill, SB 8, would have been also criminalized mere possession of digital files related to making guns. But the hearing on this bill was canceled and the bill was never considered again. We count these results as multiple big wins. House Bill 342 and House Bill 541 and SB 115, Public Safety, Permit to Carry, Wear, or Transport a Handgun Qualifications. All of these bills would have added self-defense as satisfying good and substantial reason for getting a carry permit. Unlike any other time in recent history, both committees held votes on the bills. Unfortunately, they were all given unfavorable reports and killed in committee. SB 114, Firearms, Handgun Permit, Preliminary Approval, would have permitted a carry permit applicant to file an application for a permit without the required training, to be completed within 120 days if the state police granted, quote, preliminary approval. This bill has been introduced and has had some success before, but this year the bill passed only the Senate, where its lead sponsor, Senator Hugh, pushed it through. Alas, the bill went nowhere in the House, where it never emerged from committee. A loss for sure, but it won't matter once Maryland becomes a shall issue. House Bill 722, Criminal Law, Theft of a Firearm, would have substantially increased the penalties for theft of a firearm. The bill was voted unfavorably in the Judicial Committee. It was reintroduced as an amendment to HPRB, repeal during final passage of that bill in the Senate, but it was rejected on the floor, and we support the concept, but we're neutral on the bill. House Bill 749 and Senate Bill 97, Firearms, Right to Purchase, Possess, and Carry, Use of Medical Cannabis. These bills would have prevented Maryland State Police from denying gun buyers, owners, and permit applicants over medical cannabis use. Senate Bill 97 passed the Senate but wasn't considered in the House Judiciary Committee. We testified on the bill to advise about federal law, but took no position on the bill. Cannabis, y'all. Public safety, rifles and shotgun sales, rentals, transfers, and loans as Senate Bill 737 and House Bill 786. As introduced, the bills would have required anyone wanting a rifle or a shotgun in Maryland to get a long gun qualification license and register their purchases just as with handguns. It would have also criminalized virtually all private transfers of long guns, including temporary loans. The House Judiciary Committee stripped licensing and registration in committee from HB 786, but left in bans on private sales, loans, and transfers. The House passed that version. In the Senate, however, the bill was narrowed even further to provide that only in cases involving an actual sale, not a loan, would the party to a private sale be required to seek out an FFL to perform a NICS check. On April 8th, the House refused to accede to the Senate's amendments of House Bill 786 and the appointment of a conference committee. But by the time there was less than an hour remaining in that session, the clock then simply ran out on the bills and neither became law. So this was a huge win. And finally, we will find out in the coming days what Governor Hogan will choose to do with the bills repealing the HPRB, that's the Handgun Review Board. The other bills are considered by us to be non-controversial. MSI will be spending the coming months focusing on strategies for the 2020 General Assembly and will keep the membership informed of developments. So, if you're not a part of Maryland Shall Issue and you live in the state of Maryland, please check out marylandshallissue.org. That applause is also for my Show Enough supporters who have thought it not robbery but to help a brother maintain his enthusiasm, his encouragement, his equipment, his hosting, and all the stuff that we have. That free Black Man with a Gun app that you can get on Google Play or iOS, yeah, somebody's paying for it. Once a month, I actually get charged, but it's being offset by you, the supporters. So thank you so much for being a part. If you want to be a part of the family, I call you a Show Enough supporter. Go to patreon.com/blackmanwithagun or listen to this.
Are we the meanest? Are we the prettiest? Are we the baddest mofo low down around this town? Are we not the supporters of the Black Man with a Gun? I can't hear you. Patreon.com/blackmanwithagun.
And remember, this is one of 4 podcasts that I produce. Check out warriorcast.com. That's my son's MMA, anime, and pop culture show. I have Speak Life Church for the Christians among us. You can subscribe to that by going to speaklifepodcast.com. And there's How to Prevail, our new emergency preparedness show. You can look at that at howtoprevail.com. There's also a Facebook group, which is pretty funny. Them guys say some crazy stuff on there. It says, yes, we will prevail. Look for that on Facebook. And El Segundo Edicto, which is our pro-gun podcast for Spanish speakers. You can find that at el2e.com. And I think I'll soon be going to Podcasters Anonymous. And if you're on the internet just having a good time, go to KenBlanchard.com. That's KenBlanchard.com. You'll see that I have my werewolf books. I have keychains for our Black Man with a Gun group. I have patches, and there's all kind of stuff there that you can learn and glean and check out and laugh. All right, that's it for this week. And let me know what you think about that guns and weed kind of thing. I would love to hear your comments. My email address, again, is blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. And you can check out past posts and other things at blackmanwithagun.com. Remember, if you were able to believe in Santa Claus for like 8 years, you can believe in yourself for like 5 minutes. Success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives. Just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until the next time you hear my voice, shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Ken and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.
Blanchard.Media.